so we start to warm up or we get into the start of the race. I've heard O2 deficit. What are you getting into there?
Yeah, so this is pretty much why I say heart rate isn't perfect, right? Because imagine yourself at the start line and your heart might be higher because you're a little bit excited. So your heart rate might be higher. So you might normally have a resting heart rate of about 40 or 50 beats per minute, and you're on the start line. And I've seen athletes with their heart rates over 100 just standing there nervous for a race, right?
Yeah, totally. I can relate to that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things going on when you get excited for a race, not just this, but that doesn't mean that what we're doing is meeting the oxygen demand of the muscle. That's just excitation. So if we're looking at heart rate just there, it's already wrong, right? It's not showing the demands of the working muscles. Unless actually we got a good warm up, right? So maybe that's something to do with it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about oxygen delivery because we said that the reason heart rate increases or decreases is due to the transport of oxygen. But it's actually super slow. There's a bit of a lag there. And the first thing that we need to talk about is the oxygen deficit. So as we start a race and we increase our power from 0 to our working power, usually super high at the start of the race, we're not able to...
especially for something like a mountain bike race, which just, there's no neutral zone like there is for a road race, and triathlon the same, getting straight into a swim start. It's 0 to hero in a matter of seconds.
Right. And you're not able to meet that demand aerobically. Even if you got the best warm-up, you usually have to stand around for at least 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, oh, totally.
So that's an anaerobic effort because you're not suddenly delivering lots of oxygen to the muscle. Like, there might be some oxygen stored in myoglobin, but not a ton, right? Not enough to meet that demand there. So actually, there's this oxygen deficit that we talk about. It takes a little bit of time for oxygen uptake to increase to meet the demands of the working muscle.
That can make or break a race. And again, it's just like we want to reiterate this throughout the series, is the importance of aerobic development, because your ability to recover from that initial spurt is going to be very dependent on the capacity of your aerobic system to buffer the deficit of O2. And then we come into, like looking at the graph, we've moved through to the right hand side was stopped, and it's like an inverse of the oxygen deficit, Matt.
Yep. Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And this is... EPOC. Yeah, that's much easier to say, isn't it?
Yeah. For a long time, I always forgot what it meant. I was like, exercise post-oxygen. Yeah.
I actually usually forget EPOC. I'm like, what's the acronym that we use for that one? But yeah, EPOC's easy enough to say. And this is, so we know this kind of if after we do a hard race and we look at our heart rate and it's like 2 hours later, we're eating dinner and our heart rate's still up, right? So we've done a lot of damage to the muscle. There's still this increased demand of oxygen. And this is the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption.
Yeah, and it's the same with the like Matt's got the race nerves, the caffeine. It depends on what kind of race we've done, whether it was a 1 hour event or an hours day long sort of ultra marathon Ironman event. You're going to have like a definite damage and demand of the muscle post exercise, so there'll be an elevated heart rate there as well. And so not only are those like maybe downfalls of heart rate, I guess some caveats that you need to understand, but also useful measures that heart rate can provide, that something like power, Matt, is not going to give you an indication of what's happening 2 hours after when you're sitting down for dinner.
Right, because your power's at 0. And this is why I think they complement each other, power and heart rate. But one of the things that's important to note is that you can see this oxygen deficit, that it starts to even out at like 3 or 4 minutes. And this is why when we're doing really hard efforts, this is the mistake I always used to make. So I was training just by heart rate, and I would go do a 20-minute effort, and I knew what I needed my heart rate to be at. So I wanted to get my heart rate there as quick as possible. And this is just a classic mistake with heart rate training. So I would do basically a sprint at the start of a 20-minute effort, get my heart rate up quickly, and then continue on in my zone 4 or whatever effort. So basically, I'd be suffering the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got something to show us that in more graphical tense, but yeah, I did the exact same thing. Whereas, like, all right, I need to be in zone 4 for my heart rate, and I'll shoot off at well above, sort of like in terms of running, 3K race pace when they're supposed to be like threshold 10K half marathon intervals.
Yeah. So now when I prescribe with heart rate, I say to the athletes, give your heart a few minutes to get up to the working zone if you're just going by heart rate. And we see, like, as the athletes get more experience with power, they do start to do that automatically because